Hello there.
Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your own custom swords for your PvP pack, or really any pack that you need PvP swords for. I have a bunch of swords here that I'm going to be using as an example. I'm also going to be making 2 swords from nothing, and also a 32x sword and a 16x sword using the default sword. There's timestamps in the description below in case you want to skip me just talking about some general stuff like shading, sword height, width, blade, sizing and all that stuff. So if you want, you can just go ahead to me just making these swords. But if you have no knowledge of how to make a good PvP sword, then I would recommend that you just watch this first part through. Also, in case you're a mobile and you don't have a PC and paint.net, you can still do this with any pixel editor. A lot of the automatic stuff like making shades you're gonna have to do manually though, so keep that in mind. But everything that I'm gonna talk about in the beginning will also apply for any mobile pack maker. This sword is the most important item in any PvP pack and most other packs. This image right here will be what almost every single PvPer will be constantly looking at or constantly seeing. So if you get this just wrong, just a bit, it might annoy him and he might want to switch packs just because he just can't handle looking at this anymore. Or he might not use it at all just because of how the sword looks like. So getting the sword right is very important and can make or break somebody's decision on downloading this pack. So when you're making the sword, make sure that you're really putting all your effort into it. And make sure that when you're making the sword, that's also consistent with your theme. If you have like a color theme like green or red, you can try and make the diamond sword red or something like that. Or if you have a techno theme, make sure the sword fits that theme. And also make sure that every single other sword has the same hilt design, the same shading design and all that stuff. Because if a pack is not consistent, somebody might also not like using it. But that being said, let's get into my 3 steps on how to make a good PvP sword. Step 1 is choosing what blade shape you want. You can have slanted, as you can see right here. You can have the normal double-edged normal tip, and you can have a rounded tip. Now for rounded tips, I don't recommend using them in 16x packs. I recommend them in 32x packs, 64x, 252 or 512x. Just because they look way better with high resolutions and they look way rounder. On this, it just doesn't look that good, so I wouldn't recommend using it on a 16x sword. This is just to show what I mean by round. Slanted swords have a love-hate relationship with most PvPers. Some will like it, some will not. Personally, I cannot stand using a slanted sword when it's 3 pixels wide, but I can use it when it's just 2 pixels wide. But if it's a 3 pixel wide sword, then I would go with the normal double-edged normal pointy sword. This is the one that you will see for most packs. This is also the one that default Minecraft has. And that's usually the one that I would go with if you're not sure which one your pack users might like, or if you're making a pack for somebody else, if your client will like it. Step 2, border or borderless. Now I don't have a borderless sword on me right now, but I'm probably gonna make this a borderless sword. But most of my swords have a border, and that's just because I like having a border. It gives the sword a nice texture, and it just looks way better having a border. That doesn't mean that borderless isn't going to be appealing for somebody. You might again just if you're making a pack for somebody else, just ask him if you would like borderless or with a border. You can also just show him pictures of what they would look like without a border and with a border. Usually the safest way is to go with a border, but you can always just experiment and try borderless and see if that looks great. Step 3 is choosing the correct shading. And now you can have vertical or horizontal shading. Now for most of my swords, I use vertical shading just because I think vertical shading looks the best. When vertical shading is used, the bottom is usually darker than the top. It also looks very good with a black hilt, and it's just an overall popular shade. With almost all of my swords, I use this shading 3 times, once on the outside, once on the inside, and once on the very middle. There's also horizontal shading, obviously, like in this sword. Also Purple's sword that you can see in Purple's pack also has horizontal shading. So make sure that you play around with these 2 shadings and see which one you like most. You can also use both vertical and horizontal shading, as in this sword right here, and it still makes the sword look very good. Now that we've got the blade covered, let's go over the hilts and this handguard or whatever this is called. As I mentioned with the blade, step 1 is border or borderless. Now both look good, but it's usually up to you which one you like best. Most swords have a border, but some PvP packs do have a sword with a borderless hilt. Step 2 is the shading of the hilt. Now when you have vertical shading on the sword, that doesn't mean you're going to have to do vertical shading on the blade. As a matter of fact, usually it's the other way around. As you can see right here, I've got horizontal shading going. It's darker here than on the other side, and it's also the case with the default sword. It's brighter here, it's darker over here. But paint also gives you some options to do some different shading, like you can have this like star shape, as you can see right here, just both vertical and horizontal shading, or you can just use vertical shading. The 3 is choosing a good handguard, or whatever this is called. Usually a player won't see anything below here, so making sure that this design looks good is very important. Now you can use the default one that's used for the default swords. You can change it up a little bit, or you can make an entirely custom handguard and do something unique with your swords. For hilts it really doesn't matter that much, but I do think that unique can sometimes look very good and can sometimes be very popular. But this usually won't be a deciding factor on whether or not somebody's going to use your sword, so don't put too much effort in it. That doesn't mean that you should be lazy with it, just don't overwork yourself on just the hilt. There's more important stuff. And there's also a sub-step for step 3, and that is choosing if you want to have a square ending of the hilt, or you just want it to be straight and normal. Now, it's really this is really just preference. You can have the default one all the way, or you can make a custom one. You can even like make it shorter or something to make it unique. Again, this is not gonna be something that a player will usually see. Sometimes they will. This is not something that a player will usually see when he's using a normal FOV and he's not using like screen tearing or something. And this is just like for the looks when you're like in a shop and buying a sword and you see this item, or when you have it in an item frame. So that's entirely up to you which one you like best. As in this sword here, this has such a messy ending of the hilt, just because of the difficult positioning of the blade. It really does not look bad though, and it really does not disturb me. So I'm okay with it ending off the way that it does. Before I go into making a sword from scratch, I want to talk about one more thing, which is the height and width of both the blade and the hilt. For most average swords, using the default hilt will be enough, but if you're making a smaller sword, you're gonna have to make it shorter. But I would still recommend using this for most of your blades because this looks the best. This is also a very good height. For the sword height, I would recommend don't go above 3 pixels from the edge of your canvas, and if you're making a very small blade, don't go under 6 pixels. If you're gonna get this low, the blade might not look good and it might not be visible, so make sure that you don't go below that, and otherwise people just won't really like the sword. For a default sword, I would say 3 and 4, that's usually the best. For a slanted sword, again, 3 and 4 is usually the best. 3 is still better than 4 because the sword will still look better. Going any thinner will just look bad, and going any larger is gonna obscure too much of somebody's vision. If you're gonna make a very small sword, and I think 4 pixels, you can do that if that looks good, but I'd say 3 pixels looks the best for an average sword. For the handguard, I recommend 4 pixels out from the middle is the furthest. If you go any further, it's gonna hit the canvas side, and it's just not gonna look good on an item frame. If you're working with higher resolution swords, just duplicate what I just said. 3 pixels on 32x is 6 pixels. On 64x, it's gonna be 12 pixels. You just like duplicate that for the high resolution that you have. But that should be it with all the basics on how to make a sword. I know that was a lot to take in, but you can just rewatch this video. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to make these two swords into good looking PvP swords. Alright, I'm here with a 16x sword, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this brown part here very dark and black. I just selected it with the square selection tool. I'm gonna click on hue and saturation and just make this black. Now if you want, you can also make this handguard and this bottom piece here black too. If you want, you can also keep the color. But something I do recommend doing is changing the color from being very greenish to being a bit more bluish. Okay, now I've got the hilt. I'm gonna go ahead and just cover the area that I'm gonna want the blade to be in green or some other very bright color. And I'm doing this so that later on it's easier to do shading and stuff like that. This is a bit short. There, I think this is a good size. I might even this is a bit too long. I might make this slanted. It's a bit too slanted. That looks good, I think. Yeah, that looks nice. I'm gonna do sideways shading, so I'm gonna need a second bright color. I'm gonna choose red and just cover one side of the blade with that color, and I'm gonna need another color. Let's do blue, and that's gonna be the middle of the blade. With smaller swords like this, I'm using like the what's this called? With smaller swords like this, using the gradient tool isn't really that much more helpful. It's usually helpful with really large swords, or high resolution swords. This is a lower resolution sword, so I can just do this manually. Okay, so I've actually decided to go with a border now, because borderless was not working very well for me. I think borderless can only look good on high resolution swords, when swords that are not slanted. It was just not looking very good. The black right here feels a little bit out of place in this all blue sword. That's why I usually make the handguard and this middle part here black too, just so it feels a bit better and it makes the person focus more on the blade. Because I've gone with a dark hilt and now it looks a lot better. Let's see, I want to get a bit more creative with the hilts. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stick with this time, but there's one more thing that I want to try out. That's actually gonna be something I've never actually done. I change this sword size to 64x. It still is 30. It still is 16x, but I'm gonna change the sizing to 64. I'm gonna copy this, paste it, and put it in here. How does that look? Okay, so okay, so I'm gonna try out something different with the sword. I'm gonna try like add the square instead of down there into here. Now the resolution of the sword is pretty high, so. Yeah, I think that's the 16x sword. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna try this out later in game, obviously. Yeah, no, this actually looks pretty nice, all things considered. So now with this sword done, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the 32x sword. Now, I'll admit I'm not the best at 32x sword, so you might find a better tutorial out there. But I'm gonna go ahead and try and do my best. So for this one, I've again already put the two bright colors, one for the hilt and handguard, and one for the blade and the diamond shape in here. So right off the bat, I'm gonna get two colors. Let's make one a very bright. Let's make one black and one a darker gray. And let's just go ahead and try this. This looks nice. Okay, so this could be a ton better. I can still do better than this. Let's see, what else can we add to this? I'll try doing a border, but I don't know if this is gonna be too good. Actually, I might just end it off here and try and see what it looks like in Minecraft, because it's very difficult to decide if something looks good or not without being able to test it in Minecraft. I think I'm still gonna go with the with this this shape. I might, yeah, because the other one feels a bit off for some reason. Wait, let me try and get this pixel back here. No, I think still this looks way better. Yeah. One thing I'm gonna have to change though is I'm gonna have to cover this area up like so. There we go. Yeah. That's nice. I like that. I like that design. This looks good. I think I'm gonna end it off on here and try these out in Minecraft themselves. Alright, so as you guys can see, I'm in Minecraft and I have both of these swords in my hotbar. And actually, let me start to showcase this. There we go. Okay, so 16x sword, I think it looks very good. I think it turned out really great. The 32x sword, oops, I don't think it turned out that great. I think one reason for that is because it doesn't have a border around the hilt, and the hilt shading is going in like the hilt shading that's 3D just doesn't look that good. I think the shading design that I used wasn't the best shading design that I could have used. The other sword that I have here, the other 16x slanted sword, I think that looks better. I'm probably gonna choose this size next time rather than the one shorter one. But yeah, guys, that was it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm probably gonna make a part 2 to this because I have so much more to talk about when it comes to swords. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.